Everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for Legion Season 2. Finally caught up with the season. I was actually on like the last two episodes for probably like the past 2 or 3 weeks. Actually, I didn't realize it was the end, and I was like, oh, I should probably like check on that because I didn't see a new episode come in. So, apologies for this being like, I think I'm like 2 weeks behind since the last episode of the season, but definitely loved this season. Definitely thought it was entertaining. I can say without a doubt it did not go the way I was expecting it to, even with where it was headed with like, oh, like we have kind of our established thing, good guys, bad guys. We have Farouk now off, the Shadow King is now like his own entity. And it's like, all right, well, good guys versus the bad guys. And then we throw in the element of the future version of Sid. And it's like, all right, she wants, help, like, let's change things around. You actually need to help Farouk. All right, no big deal. It's easy, we can do that, but probably shouldn't do that because he's the bad guy, this and that. And then, of course, we find out that our main hero is the main villain, so David is now going to be, actually Legion, which they actually say at the end, which I thought was kind of cool. They say, like, he basically changes to, like, his super villain name, which is Legion. And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. I just thought naturally it's just going to go kind of the normal way that it does, which is you have characters kind of change the future, and then it's like, oh, they work together, and then he realizes he's going to turn evil, and then it's like, oh, well, then I won't turn evil, but we still got to kill this guy. And that's not what happened. They basically still turned him into a villain, and it was the betrayal that they referenced. And I guess it was technically the original future. We'll see if that ends up changing. But we have our couple. There's I suck at names, so I really can't remember. And plus, um, I swear, like the woman was hardly in the season, so I can barely remember her name, and I just can't. Oliver, I remember, but I can't think of his wife's name because I feel like it was weird how little she was in this season. I was kind of upset by that because I actually really liked her character and kind of the weird middle ground that she was in with how calm she was about the situation as a whole, but she was always like really, she was always really messed up because it was like, man, I lost my husband, and then he was up for like a day and a half, and then the ultimate demon came along and like, took his body, and I was like, cool. So it kind of sucked that we didn't get to see more of her this season because I feel like she would have had an even cooler perspective. But for the most part, it just sent her into a greater depression, and she kind of just did drugs all the time. So it was like, yeah, either we'll see more of her or she'll just, kind of be a drug addict, and we got the drug addict. But really enjoyed how things ended up playing out. Like I said, I was surprised. I thought it was going to be, oh, David eventually finds out he was meant to be the bad guy, but just knowing that would kind of stop things. And then it kind of just flipped at the end, and a lot of people are upset with Sid at this current moment, and I understand why. I wouldn't blame her 100%, but I don't think she did it in the perfect way. Like, obviously, David wasn't the coolest person about it. Like, he was like, oh man, we got out of that crappy situation and mind wipe, and I love you, and then they have sex and stuff, and it was like, not the coolest way to do that for sure. So he definitely didn't, help his case about, not being a terrible person in the future, or, becoming this horrible person. But I definitely thought that they were kind of overreacting, and I understand because it's like this idea of he's got so much power. It's, the main villain of Farouk, and then you have David, and they are at the same level, world killers, like that sort of class. And it was just interesting how quickly they turned on him, and it was just crazy. It was like the craziest thing to me. And all it took, really, all it took was Farouk like speaking into the little mouse, and then the mouse goes and speaks to Sid and kind of wakes her up to everything that happened. And it was just like, that's all it took. That was all it was. It was that, and of course, I was about to say the twins, but the scientist, he realizes like, oh, it's a betrayal, like, something's wrong here. But I felt like they jumped the gun. It was like when they were talking to David, they mentioned, it was like, you can't see the version that we see because you don't think you've gotten there yet and stuff. And I was like, they're kind of doing the same thing. Like, he's done bad stuff, but they're also jumping from like this bad thing of him, tricking Sid because he's scared to be alone, all the way to him being the world killer Legion. And I was like, I feel like they're jumping just like he's jumping. Like, he's definitely not perfect for what he did, but they're also not perfect or really even smart, for jumping way beyond, and getting to that point. Like, even knowing the future, it's like, okay, let's probably find a much nicer way to kind of do this. Because personally, the last thing I would do is probably try to trap the dude who has all these powers. He's crazy. Like, he spent his entire life, mentally corrupted by this, basically a demon inside of him. He's still not really 100% over that. Like, he doesn't have like the things where he sees himself, although that came back at the end, which I was like, that's interesting, because that was kind of tapping into sort of the comic element where he has all these different people. kind of in his head, but it's just different versions of himself. Which I like how they did that because it was like the same jacket, but he had like different color shirts. But I was like, okay, this is interesting, and let's see where it goes. And it was just a disaster for them. And he, of course, he was able to escape. He was strong enough. But now it's like all the heroes. Well, I can't really say they're the bad guys, but I don't 100% know what's going on because they have Farouk there. Like, he was sitting with them and he's talking to him and stuff. And it's like, sure, but are they really like that confident in Farouk suddenly? Like, oh, in the future, like, we need you to stop David, and so now you're just one of the good guys. It's like, I feel like there's got to be some extra stuff to that because, like I said, I felt like they were jumping quite a few steps from going to from he lied to us instantly to that definitely means he's going to start killing everybody. And I feel like Sid did the same thing before everyone else kind of jumped on with her. And it was like, I get kind of that bit of corruption where she was seeing the stuff that he was kind of hiding and things like that, where he was torturing Oliver and stuff like that. But once again, I was like, I feel like that's one very very specific situation that you see. And of course, him having these lies here and there is like, okay, it sucks. You see that stuff. It's the lies that he has. It's these dark moments that he hides from really everyone that he cares about. So I don't know. It was one of those things where I was like, I don't. I wasn't 100% on Sid's side, but I certainly wasn't 100% on David's side. But I'm definitely still not on Farouk's side, like at all, like 0% on his side. Even though they had an epic fight scene during the finale, I love that, and they're just flying towards each other. Then the animation kicks in, and it was just insanely great. Like, I love the visuals for that, but it was just a crazy way to end the season. Like, I enjoyed the whole season. The only episode that I didn't like was the stupid filler episode with the alternate dimensions. That was like the one episode where I was like, why not just make it a shorter season? I feel like that had zero relevance. Like, it was kind of cool because it showed these different versions of David, where it's like, this is what could have happened. It's the version of him where admittedly, I loved it because they made a Clockwork Orange reference when he was like he was like this insanely powerful homeless guy and he was killing everybody, like just unleashing the power and people would vanish. That was a Clockwork Orange where they like come up on the guy in the tunnel, and I was like, well, I love this reference. So that was like my favorite part of the whole episode. But there's that version where he was just a homeless dude, and then he actually gets like killed by Division 3. He gets like split in half. Then there's a version of him with his sister where and I was trying to figure it out because I was trying to piece something together in this. I think the version of him that always had to take the pills that like that was shot by the cops. I think that version was the old version of him as well. And then there was like the super rich version too. So it was like, all right, that's kind of cool to see, but it just had like no relevance to anything, and I was just kind of annoyed watching. I was kind of just bored that whole episode because I was like, it's just alternate versions of him. It's it didn't even have like the cool openings like they were doing this whole season. I actually love like the openings where they say like, this is an illusion or delusions, and this is how things start, and this is perception and reality. I actually thought the openings were really really cool because it played into Farouk and how he manipulated people, and talking about that also with the monk and stuff and the teeth chattering deal. So I love how they were doing that, and I felt that whole episode was like just a it's kind of boring. That was like the one thing where I was just like, man, this has no relevance. It just did nothing for the plot. And it came after such a great episode where we find out that David's sister was killed, and that's how his friend ends up coming back. Because once again, I can't remember any freaking names. But that was really crazy. And it was like, okay, she's officially been let out, so she's not a part of like the little trio of Farouk and Oliver. And it was just nuts. And they killed his sister, they killed his brother-in-law, and they just turned him to dust. That was I mean, it's been forever at this point, but that was like some, I instantly thought of like Infinity War because I was like, oh, they just right to dust. But man, it was that was a really good episode, and just watching them go through the season, it's definitely been fun. Definitely can't wait to see what they do for season 3 because, like I said, I thought it was just gonna be like, oh, we wrapped it up, beat Farouk or sent him somewhere random, whatever, and David's not gonna be the bad guy, and now it's like it's almost like that self-fulfilling prophecy, although I'm sure they'll change it and Legion won't be like the ultimate villain, but it was an interesting way to do it. And he was just pissed, and everybody was kind of jumping to these things where it was like, you're definitely going to be this horrible person because you did this and you did this. It's like, those are bad things, but that's not like he destroyed the entire planet. So I don't know. It's, like I said, self-fulfilling prophecies sort of deal. But in the original timeline, Farouk did actually die, so they can easily change it up, and it's like, okay, well, now we realize what's going on here. Maybe everyone is being taken over, because we don't know exactly what Farouk did. Like, he revealed what happened to Sid, but he could have put some extra stuff in there, like, hey, you should tell everyone, like, this horrible thing, and he's gonna be this person. And then that coupled with the video evidence, like, oh, he, like, mind wiped her or whatever. Those two things together, that's kind of why they set him up like that. But still interesting to see, and I'm waiting to see exactly what they decide to do with it. Because, like I said, the fact that Farouk was still just walking around, that was the thing where I was like, that's something still not right. Like, no matter what they believe about David, they know exactly what Farouk was doing. And, like, he wiped out David's sister, he wiped out a ton of people. And the one thing that I will agree that kind of made me annoyed with Sid was the fact that she blamed David for everything that Farouk did. And it was like, you pull the trigger and stuff. And I was like, that is 100% a different situation from, I wish I could remember the example. It was something about pulling the trigger, but it was like, it was the son of Sam having a dog. I'm like, the dude was crazy, or maybe not, because X-Men universe. But it's like, okay, well, this is a crazy guy versus someone who is seemingly crazy, but was literally being controlled by an seemingly all powerful creature that you saw, like the crazy animated Superstorm that just happened. So it's like, you gotta give him a little bit of leeway. Like, that was the one thing where I was like, I'm definitely not in agreement with that, because that's kind of just dumb. Saying, like, he's son of Sam because of a dog with a crazy dude who pulled the trigger. It's like, well, that's not the same thing. Like, she's been in his head. Like, she literally saw what was going on in his head before. Like, she's experienced that. So I'm like, I feel like that's an insane leap, to kind of blame David for some of the stuff that happened, or any of the stuff really, because of Farouk, knowing what happened to him, knowing, like, he literally didn't realize that he never had a dog. Like, this is crazy stuff that happened to him because of this monster that was in his body the whole time. So I was just like, I don't agree with that in any way, shape, or form, that it's his fault because it was his body being controlled. So that I thought was like, that's pushing it. And then it kind of just went further. So who knows what's going to happen. David takes off. He's like in his all white outfit, which I thought was interesting. It was like, the weird thing that they were doing with that. But he takes off. He gets his old buddy, Lenny. Now, like, I remember her name. So it's like, well, there's no Blondie anymore. So they take off, and it's just like, well, who knows? I guess, like it was said, like, now we pray. Like, let's hope this dude doesn't actually turn into a world killer, because we got nothing. Like, there's nothing we can do. So I'm looking forward to season 3. I was hoping we would get like a post-credit thing like the first season, but that was basically how they led into season 2, was the post-credit scene. And this was like, yeah, you can just end it there. That's a definite, cliffhanger. So I'm looking forward to season 3. Really enjoyed this one. Of course, we'll love to know what you guys thought about season 2 and how everything's changed. We kind of lost a character. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce his name because they say it every once in a while, but I never remember. It's something like Panemone or something crazy with the black dude. He dies, and so now he's like imbued into the system. We don't really see any of him after that first episode. I thought we'd see more of him like in the finale. There would be something with that, but we don't actually see anything of him. So hopefully we'll see how that ends up playing out going into season 3. But we'll let you know how you guys felt about this season, how things played out, the characters that we lost, the changes in allegiances. Even the beginning of the season was like, yeah, we're working with Division 3, so that was a huge twist just in the first episode. But we'll love to know what you guys thought about this season, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, and of course, season 3 coming up. What are your predictions? What do you guys want to see? What do how are things gonna freaking play out now that David is kind of on his own again? He's on his own, but in control now, and also kind of mad at everybody that was happy, that he was cool with. So we'll love to know how you guys think that's going to play out. And like I said, definitely want to know what you guys thought about season 2 in general. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.